Today I want to share with you one of my absolute favorite stories, Ada Twist Scientist. This book was written by Andrea Beatty. She's a best-selling author. She also wrote Rosie Revere Engineer and Iggy Peck Architect, as well as the novels Dorco the Magnificent and Attack of the Fluffy Bunnies. She has a degree in biology and computer science, and she spent many years in the computer industry. She now writes children's books in her home outside of Chicago. This book was illustrated by David Roberts. He's illustrated many books, including Iggy Peck Architect and Rosie Revere Engineer. He lives in London, where when he's not drawing, he likes to make hats. Ada Marie, said not a word till the day she turned 3. She bounced in her crib and looked all around, observing the world but not making a sound. She learned how to climb and made her big break, with a trail of chaos left in her wake. She ran through the day chasing each sound in sight, and didn't slow down till she conked out at night. Her parents were frazzled but tried not to freak, as Ada grew bigger and still did not speak. Clearly, young Ada, with lots in her head, would have something to say when it ought to be said. That's just what happened when Ada turned 3. She tore through the house on a fact-finding spree and climbed up the clock just as high as she could. Her parents yelled, "Stop!" as all good parents would. Ada's chin quivered, but she did not cry. She took a deep breath and she simply asked why. Why does it tick and why does it talk? Why don't we call it a granddaughter clock? Why are there pointy things stuck to a rose? Why are there hairs up inside of your nose? She started with why and then what, how, and when. By bedtime, she came back to why once again. She drifted to sleep as her dazed parents smiled at the curious thoughts of their curious child, who wanted to know what the world was about. They kissed her and whispered, "You'll figure it out." Her parents kept up with their high-flying kid, whose questions and chaos both grew as she did. Even Miss Greer found her hands were quite full when young Ada's chaos wreaked havoc at school. But this much was clear about Miss Ada Twist. She had all the traits of a great scientist. Ada was busy that first day of spring, testing the sounds that make mockingbirds sing, when a horrible stench whacked her right in the nose, a pungent aroma that curled up her toes. "Zowie," said Ada, which got her to thinking. What is the source of that terrible stinking? How does a nose know there's something to smell? And does it still stink if there's no nose to tell? She rattled off questions and tapped on her chin. She'd start at the start where she ought to begin. A mystery, a riddle, a puzzle, a quest. This was the moment that Ada loved best. Ada did research to learn all she could of smelling and smells, both stinky and good. One hypothesis Ada thought could be true: the terrible stink came from Dad's cabbage stew. She tested and tested, but soon Ada knew it was time to come up with hypothesis 2. Then zowie! The stink struck again just like that. Hypothesis 2, it's caused by the cat. The cat couldn't make such a stink on its own. It needed perfume and some fancy cologne. So young Ada tested. The test was a flop. She started again, but her parents yelled, "Stop!" Ada Marie, to the thinking chair now by the time we count 3. "Enough," said her mother. "That's it," said her dad. Her parents were frustrated, frazzled, and mad. "Why?" Ada questioned. Her mother said no. "What?" Ada queried. Her father said go. "You've ruined our supper. You've made the cat stink. Enough with your questions. Now sit there and think." She looked at her parents. Her heart turned to goo. Poor Ada Twist didn't know what to do. She sat all alone by herself in the hall, and Ada once more could say nothing at all. And so Ada sat, and she sat, and she sat, and she thought about science and Stu and the cat, and how her experiments made such a big mess. Does it have to be so? Is that part of success? Are messes a problem? And while she was thinking, what was the source of that terrible stinking? Ada Marie did what scientists do. She asked a small question, and then she asked two, and each of those led her to 3 questions more, and some of those questions resulted in 4. As Ada got thinking, she really dug in. She scribbled her questions and tapped on her chin. She started at why, and then what, how, and when, and at the end of the hall, she reached why once again. Her parents calmed down, and they came back to talk. They looked at the hallway and just had to gawk. No patch of bare paint could be seen on the wall. The thinking chair now was the great thinking hall. They watched their young daughter and sighed as they did. What would they do with this curious kid who wanted to know what the world was about? They smiled and whispered, "We'll figure it out." And that's what they did, because that's what you do when your kid has a passion and a heart that is true. They remade their world. Now they're all in the act of helping young Ada sort fiction from fact. She asked lots of questions. How could she resist? It's all in the heart of a young scientist. And as for that smell, what can Ada Twist do but learn all she can with her friends in grade 2? Will they discover the stink that curls toes? Well, that is the question, and someday, who knows? I have a bet for you. I bet you $20 you can't blow a piece of paper into this bottle. Let me show you what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to take a piece of this paper towel. I'm going to ball it into a little ball. And we're going to put it right in the mouth of the bottle on the very edge. I bet you can't blow it into the bottle. You want to take my bet? $20.
Okay, so this is an empty bottle and a piece of paper, and all I have to do is just blow that into that bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I will do this. I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be able to do that.
Let's go.
Okay. Wait, do I get another chance?
You try again.
Let me try one more time.
Okay.
Oops,
Up, too
that
far
didn't
in.
work. Maybe you can set it in there for me.
Okay. Right on the edge.
Okay, let me stand up. Maybe I
Okay.
did something wrong. Same thing. This is like a carnival trick. What's the trick here? This is an empty bottle and a piece of paper. That should go in that bottle.
Okay, so you want to know why?
I do. Why?
Okay, well, let's figure it out. So in our book that we read, Ada Twist Scientist,
Okay.
she asked the question why a lot. And scientists use the question why to help them figure out what's going on in the world around them. And so we're going to use this question, why? Why can't it go in the bottle? And we're going to try to figure it out. But I'm going to show you some other things and see if it'll help us answer our question.
Okay.
Okay, so let's move this out of the way.
And so that bet was just hypothetical,
Nope,
right?
you owe me $20. Okay, so here I have a bucket of water.
Yep.
And you guys can do this at home too, with parents' permission.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a bucket of water and I have a cup, just
Okay.
a plain cup from my kitchen. And I have a tissue, like a Kleenex.
Okay.
And I'm going to take my Kleenex and I'm going to put it in the bottom of my cup. Just shove it down there. And I'm going to take my cup and I'm going to put it upside down and stick it into the water. So I want you guys to make a prediction. What do you think is going to happen when I put the cup upside down in the water? What do you think will happen to the tissue? Miss Bellin, what do you think?
You're going to turn that upside down.
Mm-hmm.
I think that tissue is going to get wet. The glass is going to fill with water and the tissue will get wet.
Okay, let's try it out. Okay, it's kind of hard to see, but do you think the water's inside there?
I cannot tell.
Okay.
I mean,
All right, so that's why we have the tissue. So if we shake it off, we can see if I take this tissue out, pull it out of my cup.
okay, completely dry.
Yeah, completely dry.
Wow.
Okay, so let's talk about why. When I put it down, there's something inside the cup. What do you think's inside the cup?
The only thing in that cup is air.
Yes, there's air. There's air inside the cup. And air has mass, and air takes up space. Air is made up of tiny little particles, and those particles, they take up space and they hit things, and that's called air pressure. And so air is really neat. That's why we have bubbles. If you're underwater, you can blow bubbles because air, it's displacing the water. It does take up space. And so we need to remember that air takes up space and that there's little particles and they push on things. Let me show you a really cool example of air pressure.
Okay.
Particles of air pushing on things. So I'm going to move that out of the way. And I'm going to get a bin. Let's put it right here. And some water. And an index card. And you can try this one at home too. If you're doing this one at home, I would make sure that you get parent permission and you're doing it over the sink.
Sure. Because
this one could possibly be a little messy. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cup and I'm going to fill it all the way up with water. To the very top. Okay. Then I'm going to take an index card, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my index card and I'm going to slide it over the top of my cup. And then I'm going to very carefully take my cup, I'm going to flip it over a sink, and I'm going to let go.
Oh, wow.
And notice the index card is staying in place. And that is an example of air pressure. Air is pushing all around us, but it's pushing up on this card, so it's pushing in all directions. It holds the card in place, even though the weight of the water wants to push down. Air pressure is pushing the card and holding it in place.
That is so interesting.
So I can let my water go. Okay, so that leads us back to our original question. Our bottle. We had a bottle.
We did.
And we tried to blow a piece of paper into the bottle. So I want you guys to think about it at home. Thinking about what we just talked about. If I had a little piece of paper and I'm trying to blow it inside the bottle, why, when I try to blow in, does the paper fly out? What's happening? So think about why. Are you thinking about why I'm smelling?
I am.
Okay, do you have an idea?
I'm assuming because there is air in that bottle, when I'm trying to blow more air into it, it's pushing out, it's resisting it.
That's right.
So is it right?
That is right. The bottle is full of air, so whenever you put air in, air comes out and that blows out the paper. It's kind of like if this bottle had something else in it, like let's say water. If it were full of water, completely full, and I poured more water into it, what would happen?
The water's going to spill over.
The water's going to come out. And so that's what happens when when you blow into it, air's going to come out and that pushes out the paper. And so you think the paper should go in because it's empty, but it won't.
Wow, that is so neat.
Pretty cool, huh?
I like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for learning about air pressure today with us and answering our question why. Ada would be proud of us.
The author of Ada Twist Scientist, Andrea Beatty, was inspired by women in science and the things they've done to change our world. The main character of our story, Ada Twist, was named Ada Marie Twist. Her first name, Ada, came from the famed Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace was the first person to create a computer program. She was a mathematician and writer. She wrote one of the most important documents in computer history. When Ada Lovelace first saw the difference engine, she became obsessed. The early computer pioneer Charles Babbage invented this gigantic gear-filled calculator, and after meeting him in 1833, Ada did everything she could to convince him to work with her. Ada's love affair with math started when she was very young. Her mother, Anne Isabel Milbanke, named the Princess of Parallelograms, was a mathematician who wanted the right upbringing for her daughter. Ada's father was the famed poet Lord Byron. The wildness that made him an amazing poet also made Byron something of a lousy husband, which led Ada's mother to leave him after Ada was born. Her mother gave Ada an unusually strict mathematical education. Ada met Charles Babbage when she was 17 and a very persistent young woman. She begged him to take her on as a student, but he was much too busy thinking up his next mechanical breakthrough. So when Ada saw an article in a Swiss journal about his newest idea, the analytical engine, she saw her chance to impress him. The article was written in French, which Ada spoke, so she translated his paper into English and published it in 1843. But that wasn't all. She added her own notes, making it twice as long. This got Charles' attention, and their collaboration began. Ada imagined a world where computers did more than mere calculations, a world where they could write music and become extensions of human thought. She also designed a way to program the analytical engine using punch cards with a stepwise sequence of rational numbers called Bernoulli numbers. This is recognized as the first computer program ever. Ada was a true visionary, and she remains an inspiration to this day. Her name has become a call to action and proof that women can accomplish any great things in technology, computing, and programming. Ada's middle name is Marie. You hear her parents shouting throughout the story, Ada Marie, Ada Marie. Her name Marie came from Marie Curie. Marie Curie was a physicist and chemist. She won 2 Nobel Prizes. She pioneered research on radioactivity. She founded the Curie Institute in Paris. She discovered 2 elements. Marie Curie was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1867 after working as a governess to support her sister's education. It was Marie's turn. She traveled to Paris to study at the Sorbonne, where she met Pierre Curie, a fellow scientist and her greatest love. Scientist Henry Becquerel had discovered a mysterious glow coming from uranium salts. Scientists didn't seem too interested in the effect, but Marie was fascinated by the glow and wanted to know what it was and why it was happening. In a stuffy shed, Marie and Pierre went to work using Pierre's electrometer. Marie examined the glowing compounds and discovered that the energy being produced came from uranium atom itself. We now know that atoms with an unstable nucleus emit particles and release energy. Marie started calling the effect radioactivity. To find the source, she and Pierre ground up and filtered down other radioactive materials like the mineral ore uraninite. Through this process, Pierre and Marie discovered 2 new radioactive elements, polonium and radium. Together, the Curies received a Nobel Prize in Physics in 1903 for the discovery of radiation. Later, in 1911, Marie won a second Nobel Prize in Chemistry for her discovery of and research into polonium and radium. Pierre and Marie made an amazing team. Sadly, they realized that the radiation from their experiments was making them sick. Pierre would do tests with radium on his own arm that left large burns. Their long-term exposure made them both tired and achy. We now understand that the effects of radiation poisoning are deadly. In 1906, Pierre was killed in a horse carriage accident. Despite her grief and the danger involved, Marie continued their important work and discovered that radium could be used as a cancer treatment. She spent hours collecting radon gas to send to hospitals, even though it left her feeling weak. In 1914, France was invaded during World War I. With her daughter, Irene, she created a unit of mobile medical X-ray trucks, which they heroically drove into the battlefields to help wounded soldiers. Marie Curie did scientific work because she loved it and dangerous work because the world needed it. Her life and work continue to inspire scientists today. So you can see that both Ada Lovelace and Marie Curie have had a huge impact on the way we live our lives today. And that's the whole point of the book Ada Twist, is that young women should be inspired to make a change and ask why.